Nah.
What do you think? Well, on the one hand, as much we say during davening, if our mouth was full of praise, like the waves fill up the sea, and we'll never be able to praise Hashem adequately. We say during Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shekol Niyeh B'Dvarav. We say during Shavuos, well, many communities, Chabad doesn't necessarily say it. The Akdamus, and it says, if all the oceans were ink, all the heavens were parchment, all the vegetation in the world were quills, all the people in the world scribes, and we'll write the praises of Hashem nonstop, we'll still never get to one fraction of the praises of Hashem.
Because you're finite and Hashem is infinite.
Correct. Being as we could never praise Hashem enough. Whatever we do will never be enough. How in Shemona Esrei we praise Hashem? We say in the first bracha, in the first blessing, Hakel Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora. You are the great, awesome God. How could we praise Hashem with such types of praises? That's seemingly putting a limit, you could say a definition to Hashem, the great, mighty, and awesome God, the sublime God who brings forth generous kindness, brings into being all things. You're giving a limit to Hashem. So the rule of thumb, and when it comes to this, is that any praise of Hashem, which was instituted, which was put into davening, textified by the Anshe Knesset Agdola, the men of the Great Assembly, that we can put into davening, put it as part of Shemona Esrei. But we cannot add our own adjectives of Hashem into Shemona Esrei. Because the more you add, the more you subtract. If you want to praise your wife to somebody and she says, oh, she's such a good cook. What a praise is that? That's how you praise your wife. You can say she's so kind and she's so beautiful, and I'm praising her that she's such a good cook. It's almost an insult to praise your wife to somebody else saying that she's a good cook.
Well, if she has a skill.
She has a skill.
So, it's somewhat of it's a virtue.
All right, it's a virtue, definitely. But to praise Hashem that you're so great and you're kind and you're merciful, putting in your own descriptions to Hashem, all you add, the more you add, the more you take away. Now, sometimes if you have a dish, all you need is a few simple ingredients to make it good. If you start hatching around, adding too many ingredients, you ruin the simplicity and the taste of the dish. So in the Gemara, we're going to discuss this idea. How could we praise Hashem in Shemona Esrei? So we'll read the Gemara inside. If you have an article, it's 18A1. The bottom of 18A1, beginning of 18A2. So we said before that the men of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset Hagdola, together with Shimon HaPekuli, Shimon from Afula, or Shimon the flax merchant, or Shimon the Pekuli, the one who prayed, or Shimon Pekuli, the one who was a judge. Shimon HaPekuli, his father was a quintessential Baal Tshuva from Rabbi Akiva. So it says Shimon HaPekuli, a very great person, who's only mentioned in Shas in regards to making the order of the blessings of Shemona Esrei. Ask the Gemara, V'chimei achar, the meya ve'esrim skenim, mehem kama neviim tiknu tefillah. We have established that the men of the Great Assembly, we're talking about the greatest leaders of that time, many of we had Mordechai, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, prophets, people which are in Tanakh. Yossi, Manishma. They together.
Hello, Rabbi.
Again, let me see you. I see the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple. Yossi, do you have a lulav of an Esrog? I remember last year. I was able to arrange for you. If you need one, let me know privately, and I'll be happy to help you arrange for you a lulav and a etrog. So we learned before Yudzayin Amud, the previous Amud, the previous page, that the men of the Great Assembly, Mordechai, we learned so much about him, Ezra, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, Shimon HaTzadik, all these people, they were the ones who made Shemona Esrei, the 18 blessings and the order of Shemona Esrei, and they had several prophets, Nevi'im, who were part of the people who made Shemona Esrei. Shimon HaPekuli, my history. So what is Shimon HaPekuli? Shimon HaPekuli, he was in the century after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. There's about a 500-year gap from the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the men of the Great Assembly, with Shimon HaPekuli, Rabbi Gamliel, who made in Yavne, after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash, who made the orders. So what did he do 500 years after the original Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, after the men of the Great Assembly? Gemara answers, Shechachum v'chazar v'sidrum. Indeed, Shemona Esrei was established originally by the men of the Great Assembly, the 120 sages, but over the course of time, people forgot them. People forgot the brachas, the order of the blessings. Now, it's understandable because the Jewish people were in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, and they had the Beis Hamikdash. They could always go and pray. And there was many different persecutions that they had, whether it was from the Greeks, whether it was from the Romans, and they weren't allowed to learn Torah, and they weren't allowed to bring Karbanis in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, with the time, and nothing was written down yet at that time, because it was still before the times of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. So therefore, they forgot the order of Shemona Esrei. Rabbeinu Yoina on Mesechta Brachos adds on over here that they always knew the brachas of Shemona Esrei, but they just used to pray it haphazardly. Meaning, I need something, I daven for it. I need something, I daven for it. It wasn't a set thing that every single person davens every single bracha. Shimon HaPekuli with Rabbi Gamliel and Yavne instituted that every person should daven every single bracha, and the order he based it on the psukim, on the verses that we just learned about now. So from him, it sounds like that there was no order before Shimon HaPekuli. He was the one who said that everyone should say all the brachas and there should be a order. In the words of the Gemara, it sounds more like that there was an order and they forgot it, and Shimon HaPekuli reinstituted the order based off a limud, based off learning of psukim. The Gemara says, continues, Mikan ve'elech, after these 19 brachas, that's it. We don't add anything else to davening. No more brachas. Asur l'sapker b'shifcha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Afterwards, we don't say any more blessings and any more praise of Hashem, and is prohibited to praise Hashem beyond what it says in Shemona Esrei. The reason the Meiri brings down is because if you're going to praise Hashem, you might make a mistake. So according to Rashi, he says you're allowed to add praises to Hashem, but not as its own independent bracha. We're going to have later on Daf Chafei a Gemara which says Rabbi Chananel, he davened Shemona Esrei, and he was so excited and inspired when davening Shemona Esrei that he added on a bunch of adjectives to Shemona Esrei. He said, "Akel Agadol Gibar V'Neira," the mighty and awesome God, and he added on the words Ha'adir, Ha'chazak, Ha'amitz, the powerful, the mighty, and they told him, "Be quiet. if you start adding your own praises, you're never going to get to even a fraction of what you're going to get to. So you're not allowed during Shemoneh Esrei to add any words or praises which are not part of the original Shemoneh Esrei, which was instituted by the rabbis. After Shemoneh Esrei, you could add on. We do add on some things after Shemoneh Esrei. After Yulei Ratzon, we do add on some more things. We add on psukim verses with the first and last letter of our name. But in Shemoneh Esrei itself, you're not allowed to add anything else to Shemoneh Esrei. I'm going to read from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which is open here on the next tab. You're not allowed to add on to the adjectives used in relation to Hashem. Yoser, more than a Kel HaGadol HaGibur VaNeira, the great, mighty, and awesome God. It's based on a pasuk, a verse in Chumash Dvarim, I think Parshas Eikev or Veschanan, which uses these adjectives for Hashem. So in Shemoneh Esrei, when the Chachamim, the men of the Great Assembly, instituted the blessings, they put in these adjectives, which is quoting a verse, quoting a pasuk. For when one adds further terms and then he finishes his list, it is appearing that he has finished saying all types, any praises that he has to say for Hashem. And who is the one that can declare, I have said all the praises there are to say of Hashem? Even these three, even these three praises, Hakel, HaGadol, Gibur VaNeira, the great, mighty, awesome God, we would not have used them had not Moshe Rabbeinu written them in the Torah, and the men of the Great Assembly incorporated them into davening. And therefore we cannot change the text of Shemoneh Esrei, which has been given through down from our sages. This only applies during actually the word Shemoneh Esrei prayer. If one wants to daven themselves, not part of Shemoneh Esrei, and add their own praises or supplications to Hashem, you could add on praises of Hashem as much as you desire. Next to because when you're davening by yourself, when you make supplications in private and use terms of praise, it seems that you're only praising Hashem because I need something, I need a request to be granted on those terms. But when you in the first blessing of Shemoneh Esrei, we don't yet ask for any requests from Hashem. We're just beginning to come to Hashem and praising Hashem. We haven't yet asked for any requests yet. And there's a second opinion, which is a Rambam, which says that you can't add any praises to Hashem regardless, even after Shemoneh Esrei. What we think is great by Hashem is actually a very, you could say it's a negative quality if it would be by Hashem. For example, if you have a king, he had millions of golden ducats. And you say, oh, this king, look at him, he has a few nickels. What type of praise is that? It's an insulting to the king. So to praise Hashem is actually an insult to Hashem, the Rambam says. So to add your own praises that were not told to us by our Chachamim, our sages, is actually an insult. Any praise to Hashem is not really a positive thing. Because Hashem's name, we say, is exalted above any praise. So when we say a praise, we're just saying that the opposite does not exist by Hashem. Hashem is mighty, meaning that weakness does not exist by Hashem. And as he references over here a little bit, Tanya, as is known to those, and also Revuchim of the Rambam, to those who learn about the oneness and unity of Hashem. So the Rambam says you cannot say any praise to Hashem, even not during davening, like our Gemara says. And the main thing is like the first opinion that you're allowed to add praises to Hashem outside of Shemoneh Esrei. And therefore we say Anenu, which on the fast day goes in the order. On Sukkos of Hashanah Yom Kippur, we have praises of Hashem. We say many, many praises of Hashem, but that's during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur during the Tchinas. Many different prayers. So the best thing to do if you want to praise Hashem a lot, say a pasuk, say a verse. Because you're saying a pasuk, a verse of the Torah, which has a praise of Hashem, and then you're saying a pasuk and you're saying a praise at the same time. Somebody who says during Tachanun, may the one, Hashem, who has mercy on a bird's nest, we have to send away the mother bird before taking the egg. May he have mercy on us. The whole show silences him. The mitzvah of Hashem is not because we have to be merciful. Every mitzvah is a decree. And this, so we have to be kind to the mother bird, is not because we need to be kind, rather because Hashem decreed it. Every mitzvah is only because Hashem decreed it, and the nations of the world could say, what purpose does this mitzvah have? We answer, we don't know. We do it because Hashem so decreed. And similar, a person has to always keep to the exact text what it says in Shemoneh Esrei. Mikan ve'elech, the Gemara continues. Osur l'saper b'shivcho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are not allowed to add on any more praises to Hashem, more than what is written in Shemoneh Esrei. Amar Rabbi Elazar, as Rabbi Elazar says, what is the meaning of the verse, which says in Tehillim, Mi Yemalel Gevurosa Shem Yashmi Yakol Tehilaso. What does that mean? Who can utter the mighty? Look inside. Who can mutter? Who can talk about the mighty acts of Hashem? Yashmiya, who could let be heard? Kol Tehilasa, all of his praise. Who is a fitting person to count and describe the praises of Hashem? Only to somebody who could say all the praises of Hashem. And since there's nobody who's able to say all of the praises of Hashem, no one has yet existed who can say all the praises of Hashem. Therefore, it is not fitting to add on any extra praises in Shemoneh Esrei more than is already in Shemoneh Esrei. So the greatest praise of Hashem is Mashmiya Kol Tehilasa. That we are holding ourselves back from praising Hashem. That is the greatest praise of Hashem. Because we're so much to say and we don't say it because we know that anything we say will detract. Continues the Gemara. The Gemara will now bring several more teachings in this vein, how we cannot adequately praise Hashem, and therefore we shouldn't excessively praise Hashem in Shemoneh Esrei. And the Rambam says even after Shemoneh Esrei, because anything we add is going to detract. Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabba Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Hamesaper b'shifchoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu yoser midai. If somebody excessively declares the praises of Hashem more than is necessary, Nekar mina olam, he's uprooted from the world, meaning he has no place in the world, and either he'll get punished, and because it seems to him that he's using up, he exhausted all of Hashem's praises. Shenemar, as it says in Iyuv, Hayisuper lo ki yadaber im amar ish ki yivaleya. Can all of Hashem's greatness be expressed when I speak? If a man would say, I am capable of saying all of Hashem's praises, Yuvula would be swallowed up. He should not exist anymore. And so these are, in Eov, the friends of Eov are trying to tell Eov, you went through so much suffering. You should curse Hashem. And he says, only praise Hashem. And the praises of Hashem are so great that I can never, if someone says they can praise Hashem sufficiently, then they have no place to be in the world. Another similar type of explanation from Yehuda, the man of Gibur, came from the town of Giberaya. So let's discuss a little bit. Where is this town of Giberaya? I'll do it tomorrow when I have the screen. Giberaya is right next to Tzfas, a little bit north of Tzfas. Rabbi Lazar Mudai is buried there. It's very close to Amuka. Amuka is where Rabbi Yonas ben Azil is buried. And there's a very ancient shul, one of the earliest known shuls. It was built several times. It was first built in the middle of the time period of the second Beis Hamikdash. It was destroyed in the first century. It was rebuilt again, expanded to the current size, which is about 50 feet by 25 feet. Pictures on the screen. I'll show it tomorrow on the large screen. They rebuilt in the 500s. They rebuilt this shul to be nicer. Here on the screen, you'll see a menorah. There's a shul in Philadelphia, a very large synagogue, which has an exact replica of this menorah and this entrance.
Where is it?
In Philadelphia, they built a replica of this, and very fancy stonework. You see over here 2 lions. This is right over there where the Aron Kodesh was from the original shul from the 500s. So this is in Giberaya. Part of the shul was rebuilt. It's in the forest. It's called the Biria forest. So Giberaya is in a place called Biraya, which is a Biraya forest in the northern part of Israel. Rabbi Lazar Hamadai is buried very close to the shul. There was a certain Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, I think it's called Rav Shimon, perhaps, of Giberaya, and he eventually became a heretic. He said something in the Beis Medrash, and the Chacham told him what he's saying is not true, to be quiet, and eventually became a kofer. He's also mentioned the city Giberaya.
And who is he?
I think his name is Shimon of Giberaya. I checked up about him once.
He wasn't a Tana, was he?
No, I think in the times of the Tanaim.
Oh.
But Rabbi Lazar Modai was one of the greatest Tanaim. He's buried there in Giberaya. This is a place in northern Eretz Yisrael. Northern Israel, right a little bit north of Tzfas. It's called the Nadvoria Synagogue, or the Nabarine Synagogue. And there's a synagogue in Philadelphia which has a similar entrance to the building. It was built 494 years after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. They rebuilt the shul, and it's one of the oldest shul in that area. And it was destroyed in an earthquake in the 300s, and it was rebuilt and expanded. So, Reb Shimon. So in the Gemara, we're learning about Reb Yehuda from the town of Giberaya, and he says, some say that he came from a different town, which we don't know much about, called the town of Giber. Some say it's actually the same town. Giberaya just is Aramaic for strong, and Giber Chayil is in Hebrew. So perhaps it's the same town, just with a different name in Hebrew. And he says, the meaning of the verse in Tehillim, which says, For you, silence is praise. For you, Hashem, the best praise is silence. What does that mean? Sama dekula, mashtuka. The best remedy for all is silence, being quiet. That's the best praise you could possibly have for Hashem, the Maharsha says. Better not to say it. He also Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, and he said, Amri b'marava, in the west, in Israel, they said, Mila besela mashtuka betrain. There's a saying that they say in Israel, if a word speaking is worth 1 sela, 1 coin, being quiet is worth 2 coins. To say something is worth 1 coin. To hold yourself back from saying something is much harder than saying something.
Mhm.
That's the hardest thing to do, to hold yourself back. Lashon hara is such a difficult mitzvah to do. To hold oneself back from speaking when they shouldn't, that's a very, very hard thing to do. The Shalah, he writes in the Zayar, even when it comes to words of Torah, a person should be very careful to what they say. When it comes to davening, be careful. You shouldn't say the words quickly. Say it slowly, like every word is counting a diamond, a treasure. Vishinantam, you should repeat it. You have to be ready what to say. Repeat in your mind what you're about to say, and then you could say it out loud. So it's very, that Zayar says all this. It's very important that the words we speak are very important, and many times being quiet is a greater, more important than actually speaking. And therefore, when it comes to praising Hashem, we only say the praises which are written in the Torah. Because that we know we could say, because the Torah itself says these praises. But more than that, we shouldn't say. Because as much as we say, the more you add, the more you could take away. But we're going to pause the Gemara over here. We'll do for a few minutes, coming up to the Yom Tiv of Sukkos, and called Zman Simchasenu, the time of our Simcha, the time of our joy. It's a mitzvah to be very besimcha. The greatest joy we can have on a Yom Tiv is if we invite friends, invite family, see how much we could help those who need sukkah, those who need help for Yom Tiv. That is the true simcha a person could have. It says during these 4 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, people are so busy getting their schach together, getting their sukkah and lulav and esrog and everything else they need together. And therefore, so the Jewish people don't have time to sin. It's very important to make sure to eat in the sukkah on the first night, even if it's raining. And the Chabad custom is that we eat in the sukkah, even if it's raining. It says in the Mishnah that if someone eats in the sukkah in the rain, it's like their master called the servant to bring them a cup of water, and then he threw the water in his face. It's an insult. And you should feel bad. And says, even if our master throws water in our face, still we're going to sit in the sukkah. We love the mitzvah so much. It even says in another sefer that if you eat, since there's no mitzvah to eat in the sukkah, when it's raining, you don't receive a schar. You don't receive a reward for it. So that means that we can do a mitzvah even for without a reward. We're doing the mitzvah, we love the mitzvah sukkah, even if we don't receive a reward for it. The schach you put on, you're supposed to be able to see the stars through the schach. But the minhag of Chabad is to put a lot of schach on. Very, very thick schach.
So you're not seeing the stars?
Even if you don't see the stars and you have very thick schach. Custom of Chabad is always to have very thick schach.
I see.
It's kosher, even if it's Hatzvi-Bais. If it's very thick, like a roof, it's still kosher. Now, of course, the esrog, it's best that should be yellow, but the more yellow, the better. But if it's completely, if it's a little green, it's fine. If it's completely green, it's obviously not kosher. And, most of us have bought an esrog already, but to get an esrog which doesn't have spots or stains, which is not peeling. And it's very important to buy an esrog, which with a proper hechsher. This esrog is not murkav. It does not have, the esrog is a pure esrog tree. Nowadays, many esrogim are grafted together with other plants. and there's a lot of discussion, and the Chabad gets esrogim from Calabria because we have a tradition of hundreds or even thousands of years, and it's even written in Medrash that Moshe Rabbeinu sent messengers on a cloud to pick up esrogs from the area of Yavan, of Italia Shalav in Italy. We have a tradition that's in Calabria, and we get specifically Calabria esrogs. There was for a long time the Jews in Europe mainly got esrogim from an island called Corfu. It's a Greek island.
Yeah.
But the Chabad Rebbe has always stayed very far away from it, and bringing from many Sfarim saying that there's a chashash morkav, a very high probability that they are not pure esrogim. They're grafted from other esrog trees together with something else. The Tzemach Tzedek once said that I would take all the machine-made talesim and the esrogim from Corfu and wrap them up and throw them in a fire together. Machine-made talesim was very popular then, that they used to use machines, not hand, to make the tzitzis, and it was invalid. And there was one time when all the, in Corfu, all the merchants got together, all the non-Jewish merchants, and they decided to make a monopoly and raise the price of the esrogim. So that year, all the rabbis throughout Europe banned Corfu esrogim. No one's allowed to buy a Corfu esrog. So then they lowered the price back down. Several years later, in Corfu, there was a Jewish child, which was unfortunately killed on the street by an anti-Semitic non-Jew. And the non-Jews over there, they made up a libel that she was actually a non-Jewish child, and they killed her to use her blood for matzah. This is in the late 1800s, 1890s, I think, this took place. And there was a big pogrom. Many Jews were killed in Corfu. And then there became a blanket prohibition using any Corfu esrogim from that time on. Because, there's already saying that there's a monopoly, the esrogim are mokov, the grafted and not pure esrogim. Plus, there was a monopoly. Plus, what they did, the people, the Gentiles in Corfu, the pogrom, so then they, since then, have not been using any Corfu esrogim.
Oh, did they kill all of the Jews in Corfu?
No, like a pogrom. It's like not using German products, right?
Yeah, sure.
Which many Jews don't use German products. So similarly, they wouldn't use Corfu esrogim. We're not going to go and give you till about 7 or 8 years ago. The most lulavim came from Egypt. Most lulavs. Then Egypt made one year, the Egyptians, made a very big, decided to play some shtick, and they raised the price exponentially. And there was like a lulav shortage that year. And then there was, then for 1 year there was a revolution, and they said we're not going to sell lulavim to the Jews. And then they said, oh, we have so much money to make. At that point, it was too late. The business has not gone back yet now to Egypt. Now already there's many lulav plantations and farms in Eretz Yisrael and Israel itself. And the vast majority of lulavim, the dairy lulavim, the good lulavim, don't come from Egypt anymore. Now they all come from Israel. But 10 years ago, it was a good chance your lulav came from Egypt. But now your lulav comes most probably from Eretz Yisrael, from Israel.
The lulav, that's from the date palm, right?
Right.
So they could grow dates too. I mean, it's not only
Right.
to that.
Right. The lulav has to be closed. When it opens up, that's when it starts growing dates. You could look at a lulav tree, and you'll see many different. You could see the lulavs along on the tree. Now, there's a custom to beautify, to decorate your sukkah. The Baal Shem Tov had a very simple sukkah, and he said the decoration of my sukkah are the simple Jews who come to my sukkah. When another Jew comes to my sukkah and is b'simcha, is happy on the Yom Tov with this, and has simple amunah pshuta, simple belief in Hashem, that for me is the most beautiful decoration for my sukkah. And so the Chabad custom really is that we don't really decorate our sukkah. Reb Chaim of Tzanz, I'm sure related to you somehow, he would give a lot of tzedakah. One time in Erev Sukkos, he needed 2,000 ruble. His children went and they borrowed from some wealthy people, and they brought 2,000 ruble to their father. Right away, he took the 2,000 ruble and he gave it out to poor people. came the night of Sukkos, and he says, everyone decorates their sukkah with all types of beautiful decorations. Not me. By me, I decorate my sukkah with tzedakah. That is the most beautiful thing I do in my sukkah. So everyone should have we'll pause today over here. And everyone should have a wonderful day at Tzlacha. And tomorrow was our last shir until after Sukkos. But if you want to come every single day, 10:45 to yeshiva after davening, and in the sukkah will be every day Mir Hashem shiurim,
Oh, yeah.
and there will be a delicious breakfast being served. Thank you.